I've talked before on this program plenty of times about how there is a two-tiered system of justice in the United States. You know, one that sees the law applied differently depending on whether you are a regular U.S. citizen or whether your name happens to be Donald J. Trump. Now, in the past, I've said that the U.S. is rapidly sliding towards banana republic status, what with those in power, the Biden cabal, trying to jail the opposition leader, that is to say, Trump. But nowhere, and I mean nowhere in the U.S. are things as bad as they are in New York City, which is Trump's old hometown and now ground zero for the effort to twist the law to stop the man from ever returning to the White House. Let's take a look at the hush money case that is now playing out in New York City, and which may go on for weeks, if not months. Well, what's the issue here? They say it's about whether Donald Trump conspired to hide a hush money payment to a porn star, Stormy Daniels, before the 2016 election to conceal an alleged affair, lest it affect his chances at the polls. Go figure. Now, the issue is not so much the payment, but how it was treated for accounting purposes. Like, was it written down, hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, or was it hidden around some other things that made it an in-kind contribution to his campaign? And if it was, does that mean it was a whole conspiracy to interfere with democracy or sway the election? Now, the funny thing is about this is that in its general outline, this case has the same sort of vibe as when the Clinton campaign settled in 2022 its own case with electoral authorities after they did much the same thing, as one person said, lied to their own checkbook about when they paid to fund the infamous Steele dossier. But, of course, unlike the question of whether or not Trump had it off with a porn star, this issue had real consequences for our democracy and kicked off the whole Russia hoax. But never mind. You know how it is, and what might have been at most one misdemeanor count for Trump, which would have been around falsifying business records, has been spun by prosecutors into a whopping 34-count felony indictment. No one, by the way, thinks this is legally sound or that it will hold water, but it doesn't matter. Because, again, apparently, if it got out in the 2016 campaign that Donald Trump wasn't the poster boy for monogamy, well, you can imagine people's shock and horror. So, on the face of it, this whole thing seems ridiculous. I mean, especially because the same people pursuing Trump now are the same people who back in the days of Bill Clinton told us we were supposed to be sophisticated and European about these things. Anyway, if the hush money case is weak, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. First of all, there is the whole matter of the judge himself, Juan Merchan. Now, the Trump team has tried to make a big deal about the fact that Merchan is clearly a Democrat, and in 2020, hold on to your hats here, he gave the princely sum of $35 American to the Biden campaign. Now, if that was all there was, I'd say, come on guys, really. But as with so many other things in late Roman Republic America, for the Merchan family, being anti-Trump is really now a family business. Let me explain. Judge Merchan's daughter, that is the daughter of the guy overseeing the Stormy Daniels hush money case, is president of something called Authentic Campaigns. And that turns out to be a hard-left political consulting firm with clients like Adam Schiff, the Fang guy, the guy who led Trump's first unsuccessful impeachment trial. And then there's the jury pool. News came through in recent hours that they managed to seat a 12-person jury for the case, and, well, great. But remember that jury is drawn from a pool of New York City voters where something like 95% of the people on the rolls detest Trump. And from the start, the judge made it clear he didn't care about this at all. Listen to this description of what reportedly happened when Donald Trump's lawyers complained about a potential juror with anti-Trump stuff all over their social media.
She was interviewed and left the room, and then we didn't have the cameras on, so we didn't have a visual of Donald Trump at this point from the overflow room that I sit in. We have closed-circuit TVs, but the judge there was some back and forth between the lawyers, and then the judge actually admonished the former president because he was huffing and puffing and gesturing towards the juror. He said the judge said it was completely inappropriate, and he said, "I won't tolerate it. I won't have any jurors intimidated in this courtroom."
And other jurors have said that even if they want to be fair, well, they don't know how they can manage it, given the outside pressure from the media and family and friends to get Trump.
And she said, in part, that she got calls just yesterday alone from, quote, friends, colleagues, and family, quote, questioning my identity as a juror. She continued, "I don't believe I can be fair and unbiased and let the outside influences not affect me in the courtroom." This hits at the heart of the difficulty for these jurors over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks.
So from the Small Mercies Department, at least one juror who was seated was later dismissed after their anti-conservative vandalism was discovered.
This has to do with something that very well could have been the fact that this juror may have been arrested back in the 1990s conducting some type of political vandalism against something, posters on the right, and it was not revealed, or he did not remember it and did not include it, and that is why that juror has been dismissed.
Look, I'm sorry, but there's no other way to put it. This is a stitch-up. They don't really care if this case is so ridiculous that it gets thrown out on appeal. The point of this whole case against Trump is that the process is punishment, keeping him there, keeping him off the campaign trail for weeks and weeks. And there are three things one needs to say about this. First of all, to return to the original point, what's going on in New York, this is really third world stuff here. In no sane universe should a guy with such an obvious axe to grind, to say nothing of ridiculous conflicts of interest like this judge, be presiding over this trial. Hell, this trial, which again is over what, were this any other defendant, what would have been a misdemeanor at most, should never even have gone on, except for the fact that they need it to discredit Trump, damage his name, and keep him off the campaign trail. Now, second point, and this is just as important, partisan Democrats who have turned Trump into this sort of hate figure, like the monster in a German children's fairy tale, are setting an unbelievably dangerous precedent here. I know the Democrats think they are going to stay in power forever just by importing an endless stream of new voters. But, eventually that's just going to be impossible. Do they want to live in a world where being in opposition means not just being out of power, but also being relentlessly pursued through the courts, where even if the charges eventually fall over, the very process is punishment? Well, I don't think so, or again, at least I hope not. But finally, and this may be the most important point, Democrats are pursuing Trump ultimately for one reason and one reason only. They are worried that their candidate, Joe Biden, is so addled and his Bidenomics such a failure and the world such a mess under his watch that there is no way that they can win this election fair and square in November without knocking out his opponent in court. But let's turn this around, because if Donald Trump is the existential threat they say he is, if his victory would mean the end of democracy as we know it, well, as Joe Biden himself would say, maybe try a different candidate. It ain't that hard, folks.